Oh, want to make sure she wants some of the weather.
Oh, no.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
Susan is going to be leading the meat and potatoes of this, but I'm just going to lead you through a Christmas quiz. And you don't have to raise your hand or anything like that to give your answer. I know. Yeah, but I think we sometimes have so many. We hear the story so often, and it's told in so many different ways. Christmas pageants, movies, just such a variety of ways. Christmas carols, that sometimes we lose a little bit of the biblical story or add to the biblical story. And so this is going to be a little look at some things that, just a few questions to think about with the biblical story. For the journey to Bethlehem, Mary and Joseph, A, walked. B, Joseph walked and Mary rode a donkey. The C, they rode a bus. D, who knows? Anybody want to venture?
Yeah.
B.
The most common response probably would be B. D is the correct answer. The Bible doesn't tell us how they got it. We can assume they walked, or we can assume they used what transportation would have been available, but we really don't have a means of transportation. When Mary became pregnant, Mary and Joseph were A, married, B, just friends, C, engaged, or D, none of the above. C, yep, they were engaged. Matthew 1:18 would say that. When Mary became pregnant, A, Joseph married her. B, Joseph wanted to dissolve their relationship. C, Mary left Nazareth for a while. And D, both B and C. D, yep. Joseph was going to set her aside. And Mary left for a period of time to visit Elizabeth. Christmas has always been observed on December 25th, on January 17th, at Grandma's house, or none of the above.
All of the above.
Maybe all of the above, but actually it was in the 4th century that December 25th was chosen as the date to celebrate. And probably has more to do with solstice and the lengthening of days than many other things.
Was the 17th the Orthodox Christmas? Or no, day 6th.
The sixth would be Epiphany, and the Orthodox celebrate at that time. In Brooklyn, when we were living there, we had the kings celebrated the 3 kings. That's when the Puerto Rican people and that around us gave gifts. Was with January 6th. So we used to do our Christmas program more toward that time than right before Christmas. How many wise men came to see Jesus? We 3 kings. The only reason we've had the picture of 3 is because they gave gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And so we have that. The Bible does not tell us how many came to see Jesus. Who directed Mary and Joseph to go to Bethlehem? Herod, an angel, Caesar, or the IRS?
How about an angel?
Caesar.
Caesar, yeah. They went because of a decree by Caesar Augustus. What is a heavenly host? An angelic choir, the welcoming angel in heaven, an array or an army of angels, or none of the above. See, yeah. And actually, the Greek word would be translated army. So even an array is maybe not quite accurate. How many angels spoke to the shepherds? A multitude, 2, Gabriel and Michael, 1, who knows? One. There was one angel that spoke to the shepherds, and then what song did the angels sing? Oh, little town of Bethlehem, joy in the world, glory to God in the highest, or none of the above?
None of the above.
Okay, I'll give credit for C or D. Because the reality is, it states that they said glory to God in the highest. It doesn't say they sang. So that's a picture we have, but we'll let
It's an
singing.
international language, no music.
That's true, that's true. And the question was stated in a misleading way. Baby Jesus was born in a cave, manger, Bethlehem, none of the above.
B.
B and C. Okay, they had traveled to Bethlehem, yes. It says he was laid in a manger, didn't say he was born in a manger. We also have the idea of a stable. And the reality is often houses in those days had a cattle trough right by the front entrance or the main level of the floor in the housing. And so laying the baby in a manger, it could have been in a house, not a stable. Anyway, Joseph's family was from Jerusalem, Nazareth, Bethlehem, none of the above.
Nazareth.
I think, I don't know.
They had to go to Bethlehem because that was their family of origin. That's where they came from. What animals were present at Jesus' birth? Cows, sheep, and camels, cows, sheep, and donkeys, lions and tigers and bears. Who knows? Who knows? There's no mention of animals in the Bible. The only mention would be the shepherds were tending their sheep, but they were out in the fields, and we don't know where at the place of birth. What is a manger anyway? A barn, a place for hay, a feeding trough, a Bible term for the church nursery. So it was a feeding trough. A feeding trough. For it could have had hay, yeah. When did baby Jesus cry? When he opened the wise men's gift? Whenever babies usually cried? When the cattle started lowing? Or no crying he makes? B. Whenever babies usually cry. Jesus was human, born as a human child. Who saw the star over Bethlehem? Mary and Joseph, shepherds, 3 kings, none of the above. Okay. That would make sense. Actually, the 3 kings, there's no mention of 3 kings, by the way, in the Bible. And star, they followed the star, they saw the star in the east, but they didn't know where they were being led until they stopped to talk to Herod and stopped in Jerusalem. And the star apparently, well, we'll get to that, never mind. What in the world are magi? Eastern kings, bankers, astrologers, school teachers. Astrologers, yeah, they studied the stars. But not simply as astronomers would today, scientists, but as astrologers for what the stars would reveal. And so when they saw the star in the sky, it may have been the way the planets were conjoining. It may have been many other things that they may have observed that gave them a message about a king being born, and they came to honor the king. When the wise men brought their gifts to Jesus, they found him in a manger, a house, vacation Bible school, or none of the above. A house, yeah. The wise men came later, perhaps as much as 2 years, almost 2 years, because Herod, to try to wipe out this rival king, chose to kill the children under 2 years old.
Appropriate entrance.
Yeah, quite proud.
So Jesus could have been about this age when the wise men came.
Yeah.
What sign were the shepherds to look for? See a baby in a manger. Very good. And the star is from Matthew and the story of the wise men, not about the shepherds, which come from Luke. What did the innkeeper say to Mary or Joseph? I have a stable out back, come back after the holidays, there's no room in the inn, none of the above. See, there's actually no innkeeper in the story. There's no mention of an innkeeper. All it says is they laid him in a manger because there was no room in the inn. So,
And didn't the wording of that also get changed in the new online version that we?
that could be,
I remember that from last.
Guest
year,
house,
that-
guest room.
That it's not in anymore.
did it say guest room?
Yeah. There's no
Okay.
guest room or something,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. In what books of the Bible will you find these fascinating facts? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Matthew and Luke, Mark and Matthew, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Matthew and Luke, yeah. We can only read about Jesus' birth in Matthew and Luke. What's your favorite Christmas tradition?
Calm of Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve,
Calm of Christmas.
the calm of Christmas Eve. Yeah. As crazy as it was, and the last 2 churches I was pastor at had 3 services on Christmas Eve like we have here, plus they had Christmas morning, always. But as crazy as it could get, I did like going back to church for a late Christmas Eve service. That was always kind of, there was a peacefulness to it, and there was a total, I mean, if you could talk about different congregations based on when the service was held, it was just night night and day between an earlier Christmas Eve service, which was chaotic and, you know, noisy and crowded. And then the late Christmas Eve service was much calmer, peaceful, and there was a real difference, so.
That often too, in the churches, we were, Christmas morning, have that calmness too, because there were many people that
There was
couldn't,
small-
for various reasons, be there. And you really felt the presence of the hymns, and you could just
Yeah.
hear things, and usually there weren't a lot of special groups singing or performing, everyone was just joining.
Yeah. Any other favorite traditions?
Christmas caroling.
Christmas caroling, yeah.
Sitting next to my father at Christmas Eve worship, the only
Okay,
time of the year I saw him.
okay, okay, yeah. Food.
Yeah.
Family getting together.
Families being together, yeah,
Getting all the cards from people we hadn't heard from for a long time.
yeah, getting that once a year greeting from people in through Christmas cards, yeah.
That seems to have changed with email now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Facebook and
Where-
things. We get the
we
greetings
get some
via
greetings via email,
computer.
The lights are kind of pretty.
lights,
The lights.
the lights, yeah,
That reminded me too, in my hometown, there were a few of us cousins, on Christmas Eve, we would go out if the snow was falling and just walk around Rushford and sing carols in the street. It was just quiet and just, didn't go up to doors or anything, but we just walked together.
we put out notice a couple of years ago to our homeowner association and asked, you know, if they wanted Christmas carolers, and then our nephews and their families, and we went around to different houses that asked us to come. Well, I think Susan, it's, thank you. You passed.
No, I don't think I passed. Can I share an anecdote?
Sure.
And one year as a pastor, I thought, let's do some education about the accurate Christmas story. So I showed a video that came up from the ELCA. And anyway, I showed this video about the things that actually happened and didn't happen, that were legend and all this kind of stuff. Got all done, and Mary McClellan, member of the congregation in the Bible study group, she says, I don't care what the video says, I don't care what you say. She says, I'm going with the old story. That'd be true of all of us.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
The old story.
The old story.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna be a Grinch because it sounds a little bit like when Richard Rohr is talking about the poverty of Christmas. I don't know if you've read, I'll read it really quick, but this is not to do away with any of the wonderful parts of Christmas, but looking a little bit deeper and maybe what we haven't thought of before, that I think there is some hope for us in Christmas that we don't usually talk about. So I'll just read this real quick. There's really nothing pretty about the first Christmas. We have Joseph breaking the law, knowing that what he should do with a seemingly adulterous woman, but he doesn't divorce Mary as the law clearly tells him to do, even though he has no direct way of knowing that the baby was conceived by the Holy Spirit. It can certainly lead us to wonder why so much of Christianity became so legalistic when we have at its very beginning a man who breaks the law to protect the dignity of the woman he loves. Then we clearly have a couple that is homeless and soon to be refugees or immigrants in their flight to Egypt shortly after Jesus' birth. So where is this God revealing God's self? Certainly not in the safe world, but at the edge, at the bottom. Among those people in places where we don't want to find God, where we don't look for God, where we don't expect God. The way we've shaped Christianity, one would think it was all about being nice and middle class and normal. And under the law, in the Gospels, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph are none of those things. It would be foolish to pretend that it's always easy to remember that Christ is present in the ordinary stranger. If Mary had appeared in Bethlehem clothed, as St. John says, with the sun, a crown of 12 stars on her head, and the moon under her feet, then people would have fought to make room for her. But that wasn't God's way, nor is it Christ's way for himself. Now, when he is disguised under every type of humanity that treads the earth, even us. And it just kind of a side note. In many of the major religions, they have their God figure coming in all sorts of ways on chariots and all that kind of thing. And Christianity is the only one where he comes as a vulnerable, helpless, poor baby. So what is our story as Christians? God being totally vulnerable, totally poor, a little child. If we're honest, that's not a very fitting image for God. It's telling us right away that God is not who we think God is. Sadly, and I'm not sure this is true, but most people's image of God is jolly Santa, making a list, checking it twice, finding out who's naughty or nice. It's certainly not this humble, helpless baby who has come to love us in ways that we might not be ready to be loved. What this feast tells us is that reality at its deepest foundation is good, even very good. The divine is hidden quietly inside the human. The holy is hidden in the physical and the material. Therefore, we have every reason to live in hope and trust and confidence. And we can talk more about that later, but what does that mean? Why is there hope when we think that the divine is in us, kind of like he was in the baby, but somebody who was helpless, not powerful, not, with angels' wings, that kind of thing. So, the questions are, Father Rohr writes that we tend to look for God in places we consider nice and normal and middle class, but instead God chooses the ordinary and messy and humble. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree in the sense that I think he's in both places. It's not an either or.
Right.
Could you repeat that?
Sorry, yeah. He said that he thinks it's in both places, not either or, but both the messy and the humanness and the normal and middle class. I think his point being that many times we leave out the one part. Yeah.
When you see the bulldozer shoveling up the encampment in Minneapolis and dumping it in a dump truck. Is that Jesus being dumped into a dump truck, I think, when I see that on the news.
Yeah. Jean?
Just this week, reading some of the devotions and the texts about John the Baptist preparing the way to make a path in the wilderness. It struck me that God is in the wilderness of our lives, leading us through to it. Just really hit me strong with the chaos and I've been up at night and my mind goes and I just think that God is as much present to me then as in the sparkling, glorious moments. Oh, and leading me through.
Right.
We all in our lives have those
We all
wilderness places, those that I believe we are led out if we notice it.
And maybe that's where the hope comes from that he talks about, is this. God is in the vulnerable. I mean, if we have a Santa Claus God, you better do everything right, you know, or else maybe go to hell. I don't know, but if you have, the God that's in the baby Jesus, that's kind of vulnerable and poor, and when we are in the wilderness, not knowing what to do, that God is maybe most present in that. Not most, but a lot. When you think of God being vulnerable, totally poor, a child, how does that make you feel?
Well, to me, it's, a good, reason not to believe in a God that's omnipotent and all powerful and almighty. That God comes on purpose, of being someone who's vulnerable and teaching us how to love one another. But that's really one of the strongest arguments for a God that's not omnipotent and all powerful, but rather empowering instead.
So God is more empowering.
Than power.
Michael?
So I think that the main thing I struggle with, and I think it's just the human condition, is the whole dualism thing. It's like, it's hard not to think of God as being big something out there. And we petition God like God is in another place. And then, oh, well, we're supposed to pray like God is in us, so we can do that. But it's hard to hold those two thoughts. God is neither in us nor out there. It's the dualism that our brains set up just because we're human makes it hard to really get to God. And I think that first one, that nice, normal middle class, that's part of us. But the ordinary, messy, and humble is also part of us. And I don't think we can truly experience the fullness of God unless we let God be in that place with us, with all of our humble messiness and so forth. Because we all are, even if we're middle class and seem to be doing all the right things.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer has a good little writing that talks about Christians are called to see the world and God's action in the world from below, not above, but from below. That is from the point of view of the suffering or the oppressed or whatever, you know, and take a look at what's around you from that point of view, or at least try to. That's been very helpful for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of talked about it. What is your primary image of God? How do you wish God would act? I wish he would act like a Hallmark movie.
There you go.
We were just watching one the other night. That's not really true, because in our struggle and suffering, a lot of times is when we get closer to God or depend on God more, maybe.
Isn't it interesting too, come back to John the Baptist, but right after Jesus was baptized, where was he led? Into the wilderness. I mean, so even as human as us, led through the wilderness. And not given what the devil taunted him with
Right.
as the easy way out.
Yeah. And I just thought too, you know, for some people, Christmas is a wilderness. If you've lost family members, if you have struggles, if you're not feeling Christmassy or whatever, that is a wilderness for some people. And how do we reach out to them? You know, I mean, yeah. Have you had experiences where you saw Christ when you didn't expect it? What happened? Huh? What?
But it's through my mother, who had a really rough life, and But she would talk always about trusting Jesus constantly. I thought she was naive, you know. And she would talk, well, Jesus would come. If she was having trouble, not enough food, I wasn't living in nearby then. So, but she said, then I'd pray and Jesus would come. And I said, what do you mean he would come? Well, the neighbor would bring over a casserole. Someone in the town would bring her something that she had something to eat. I mean, for me, that was her experience of seeing Christ around her.
Maybe we make a mistake by being embarrassed, or if we can't say we've had more of a mystical isn't the right word either, but an experience that we name as Jesus. But instead of always being awake to the reality that Jesus comes through others, those around us, it gives us people around us to be his hands, his feet. So there, again, the dualism Michael was
Yeah.
talking about, he comes in many ways to be present to us.
There was I think it was a Richard Rohr daily thing recently that talked about that as being just those moments of awe, of wonder, of just that feeling of awe and wonder. It doesn't have to be religious or thinking about Jesus, but that whole feeling of the world is great, the world is, you know.
And seeing Christ in others, maybe where you don't think. And maybe we prejudge, like maybe the homeless, or maybe people sitting on the street, you know, looking for handouts, or people who are different cultures than ours, or sometimes that's a wake-up call. And I hope, you know, hopefully what we're doing with settled and affordable housing stuff might help us have more contact with that.
This is going to sound nutty. It was last spring. I was troubled by a number of things and I was sitting on our back porch and I was looking out and up at the sky and now this sounds kind of fantastical and crazy, but I saw a cross. A cross suddenly appeared in the clouds and the sun behind it, and I blinked my eyes a few times and there it was still there. I don't know what that means. Means maybe I should be locked up someplace, but you know, it was right there. It was just as vivid as could be for me, anyway. So a presence.
Yes. So, you know, where do you feel God's presence? Sometimes where maybe you don't expect it is another way to put it. Well, anything else? Oh,
I
Peter?
was thinking how theologically Easter is the bigger holiday, but as far as like the celebration or the mood, it feels like Christmas is the bigger holiday.
Is that because of how we've gotten to celebrate it in the US, do you think, or?
Um,
Well, maybe it's not because it's not about death.
yeah, it really feels like it's like the new life of like every, and maybe Jesus represents the new life that comes with every child. And they're kind of that newborn yet connection to the cosmic God. But it is like the old story, something about that, old story that is so dear.
I'm talking too much. I'm just sitting thinking, why is it that Christmas time create such anxiety rather than joy. So maybe I just speak for myself, but are we trying to keep the memories of the past and the traditions of the past? Do we allow ourselves in Christmas to notice change and growth too? I mean, does that make any sense? Or-
I mean, I get the anxiety part for sure, but tell me more again about what a change and growth.
Well, families change, families separate
Right.
and move, and you physically, you can't always bring people back together again.
Right.
And those start bothering, you know, you can't do it, but oh, the times when we could be together, and you start reminiscing and you pull out the old albums and but instead of just living in the surprise of the day and the experience, letting go again.
Letting go again. Yeah, letting in all the feelings and not judging them at Christmas. Like if we do feel sad about that or.
We're not doing things perfectly or.
I can remember as a parish pastor now, Christmas time and Easter, two highlights of the Christian year. There would be more people ill and in the hospital, it seemed to me. I was making more of those kind of calls, and also more funerals. It just kind of interesting to me that, I don't know if it's the stress, the pressure, or just coincidence. I don't know.
I know in my practice as a psychologist, you probably know that too, is that holiday times, you kind of prepare for people coming in stressed and anxious because they're going to be with family again. And some of those issues might pop up, or you might talk about politics or, you know, that kind of thing too. It can be a stressful time.
It's dark and cold.
It's dark and cold. Wonder if it was dark and cold in the manger.
Wonder what it's like in the southern hemisphere for Christmas.
What'd you say?
Well, Australia, they make
Oh.
the Barbie.
Yeah.
In Texas, we used to turn off the air conditioner, or turn on the air conditioning, and so we could turn on the fireplace, so. It felt like it was- So does this kind of feel like a bummer way to look at Christmas?
No,
I don't think so.
Okay. Again, you know, trying to get out of it, what the hope is for us. To me, the hope is that God is with us in the wilderness, he's with us. And to keep looking for him in the eyes of people that we might not look for.
One of the things I think about is this revelation of God at Christmas. What contemporarily would be a revelation of God? Peace in Ukraine and peace in Gaza, to me, would be a revelation of God. I know it ain't gonna happen, because we humans aren't gonna let it happen. But, you know, the thing in Ukraine's gone on for a couple of years now. The thing in Gaza's been going on for 60, 70 years. And it just never ends. And each bomb that drops creates the next terrorist, and
Exactly.
you know, where do you see Christ in that? I have a difficult time with seeing God and Christ
In war.
in some of these earthly experiences that are contemporarily going on.
Anybody have any thoughts about that?
Well. God does prevail, and I'm thinking of, I think a lot about World War II. Because it's when I was born and how I grew up, thinking of the recent history of World War II. And what's going on now in the world, for all the death and destruction in both places, is still relatively, it just doesn't equal the scale of World War II and the 20 million dead in Russia and that sort of thing. And yet in that, out of World War II, we got Bonhoeffer and that message resonating throughout the Christian community. We had, I mean, the faith didn't die in there, even though the church in Germany was co-opted by Hitler, just like the church in the US is being co-opted by Trump. So we don't have to think in those dualistic terms about prevailing on a human scale necessarily, if in a holistic sense, we're prevailing in a spiritual way.
And it's almost a similar question to, why doesn't God heal everybody? Why do people that we've prayed for and loved still die? Where do you see Christ in that? It's like, where do you see Christ in suffering?
Yet there is a kind of hope in the whole Christmas event, incarnation. I think of Whitehead, Carol, I don't know if I'm not gonna get any quotes right here, but he writes about all the big things happening. There were all these world systems of government and all this kind of stuff going on, and then he says, and then there was this very quiet movement in Palestine. It's such a beautiful passage, like this very quiet movement of God in Palestine. The birth of Jesus, and then the Jesus growing up to manhood and all of it. I mean, it's just, I can tell you what page it's on in his book, but I can't repeat it all for you. But it was just a wonderful passage. It gave me hope that God comes into the midst of the difficulties of the suffering in a very quiet way, but a growing way.
But it's not what we always want or see as a success, yeah.
No.
But how do we stay attached to that thought and hope,
I think we turn inwards and experience God in us.
And as a community, I think, but for sure, spending more time trying to get that peace that he gives us, for sure. She gives us, he gives us, they give us. Okay, any other thoughts?
Oh, just the whole like humbleness of it is reflected later on in further on in Christianity with the humbleness of Jesus's further message of dying on the cross and the Sermon on the Mount. But it all kind of started in that way with this humble birth.
Right,
It's very contrary to the general way of the world. Might is right and
prosperity gospel, maybe,
Washing feet,
washing feet. Yeah, maybe we should, instead of buying presents, maybe we should wash each other's feet. I don't know how we would feel about that. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.